Zach here, WHIP, Philly's #1 college radio station. Oh boy, my next guest was a great offensive lineman for the Green Bay Packers. He was a vital asset on that Packers sweep play. He's also blocked for the greats of Bart Starr. He also blocked for Jim Taylor and the Golden Boy. And let's not forget, he won 2 Super Bowl championships with the Green Bay Packers and a bunch of NFL championships. And that's the best player not to be in the NFL Hall of Fame in the history of the league. And that's Jerry Kramer, number 64. Zach Gelb here. How are you?
Hey, Zach, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you for coming on. And we've heard all the stories in the past. Commissioner Roger Goodell thought you were in the Hall of Fame. He said, hey, Jerry, why aren't you coming up to Canton? You said, Commissioner, I'm not in the Hall of Fame. The great John Hanna also did that as well. I'm just curious, after all these years seeing your name passed over, and it's absolutely ludicrous that you're not in the Hall of Fame, why do you believe that you got passed over?
Zach, I have no idea. I really have thought about it a lot. I've talked to a lot of folks about it. There's been several series, too many Packers, too many Bears, too many books. Guy in Green Bay is not backing me. Odds and ends, it's just a variety of things, but nothing that I could really put my finger on. It was, frustrating a little bit for a while. But I grew to accept it and come to an accommodation with it and look at life and look at football and think how fortunate I have been to have been a part of that Green Bay Packer dynasty with all those great players and great guys, and feel like I'm a pretty lucky guy.
Whenever people go up to Canton to see the NFL Hall of Fame, they see the heads and they see everyone's description and the player they were. How do you want people to remember Jerry Kramer if you don't get in the Hall of Fame?
Zach, I think I'd like them to remember the final drive in the Ice Bowl, not the quarterback sneak so much, but the drive itself. We got the ball with 4.5 minutes to go. We were 65 yards from the goal line. We were down 3, and we had made a minus 9 yards in the previous 31 plays, 10 possessions. 10 possessions, minus 9. Now we got 65 yards to go. It's minus 57 at this point. Gillingham stepped up. Bowman stepped up. Dollar, Anderson, Mercine, Skoronsky, Gregg. The whole team stepped up, and we performed as a team in those final 4 minutes of the game and got down to the goal line with 16 seconds to go and got in the end zone, won the game, went on to Super Bowl II. So that moment, that drive represents the Packer team and the Packer emotion and feelings that they had for one another. They just pulled it all together, and obviously there's a little bit of Lombardi in there with his discipline and his consistency and his preparation and his commitment and all those things that he stood for. But when you think of Jerry, think of him as a part of the team and a part of that final drive in the Ice Bowl.
What was Lombardi like during a game when things weren't going all that well? How did he get that best out of you like he did in the Ice Bowl?
It depends, Sometimes he could give you that, what the hell is going on out there? As we've all heard a number of times. And other times he could say, hey, we're doing well, we're here, we're doing this. He never knew. He might give you one of the most emotional locker room speeches pregame, or he might tell you a little joke. A silly joke, depending upon your emotional level. If you were too high, too tight, too wired up, then he'd tell you a silly little joke. But he had such a wide variety of emotions. I think Gifford, when he was with the New York Giants, used to call him Mr. High-Low. And he was up and down like a yo-yo. So you never knew exactly what to expect from him.
We're talking to Jerry Kramer. He is a Packers legend, number 64. We all know his story. 2 Super Bowl championships with those Packers, played in the Ice Bowl, did it all. He's an NFL legend, not in the Hall of Fame. He should be, though. But, Jerry, Lombardi, looking at this matchup coming up this weekend between the Packers and the 49ers in the playoffs, what would Lombardi say to this Packers team if he was the head coach of this current group?
Of all the runners who run in the race, only one can win. And we run not just to be in the race, we run to win. So go out there and knock somebody on their keister. Keep your head up, your eyes open. Don't make any mistakes. No foolish offsides, no silly penalties. Play the game you're capable of playing and bring a victory home.
When you're a player hearing the great Coach Lombardi speak, what goes through your head? You must have to want to run through a wall for this kind of guy. Was that the kind of coach he was?
You know, Zach, there was a fire on Sunday that he used to talk about. He said the reason he came out of retirement and went to coach the Washington Redskins was because he missed the fire on Sunday. And I tell you, in that tunnel before you came out onto the field, it felt like your heart was going to burst and you were going to run out of air and you were going to explode. You were so emotionally high and so emotionally prepared for the game that sometimes you could hardly spit. You know, it's just an incredible emotional high that you never experience again for the rest of your life. So he was always excited too, you know, and he would do little things like I'm listening to that CD set I put together a while back, and Coach Lombardi was talking to us pregame, and he gave us a little pregame speech, and then he starts telling us how to line up. Okay, well, we're going to introduce the left tackle first, and then the left guard, and then the center. And I'm listening to this, and I'm going, well, he's nervous. We've been lining up for 9 years, like 150 times, and now he's telling us how to line up for the introduction. So he's just doing that because he's a little nervous, and he needs something to say. And so that's what, you know, you never knew exactly where he was, but he was an emotional guy. And he had a great fire and a great energy about him, and he always brought that to game time.
Packers always have an advantage when they're playing in Lambeau Field, but this week they go on the road. As a player who's won a game on the road in the playoffs, how tough is it to go on the road and squeak out a victory, what the Packers could do come this Saturday night?
Well, this is going to be quite a football game. I think San Francisco is going to be a significant challenge. They're a fine football team. They're well coached. They're big. They're aggressive. They are successful. They believe in themselves. So it's always a little more difficult to play on the road. You know, you travel, the hotels, the change of routine, that whole thing always offsets you a little bit. But this is going to be a great football game. I think because Aaron Rodgers is so hot right now, and because so many of our receivers are hot right now, and Woodson's coming back, and we're well, and we're peaking, I think we're going to win the ball game, but I think it's going to be a very difficult ball game. And like so many of these games, it comes down to a play, maybe a penalty, maybe a fumble, maybe an interception. And I think this game will come down to probably a single play, and it may come down to the last play of the game.
I think this will be, out of the 4 games you have this weekend, this one will definitely be the best. And you just look going into this game, there's so much history between these two teams. The Packers, we all know their historic history playing Lambeau Field, Coach Lombardi, yourself, and a bunch of other Hall of Famers that have been on that team. Like I mentioned in my intro, you look at the 49ers and you see what they were able to do with Joe Montana, Steve Young, Bill Walsh, Jerry Rice. The history of these two teams, it's just so fun to watch when you get a game like this.
Yeah, it's a classic match. It kind of reminds me of the Pittsburgh game in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago down in Dallas. It was such a pair of great football teams and a classic match. And this is going to be a wonderful football game. And I think without in my own emotional little package here, I think it'll probably be the best game of the playoffs this weekend. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm very excited about it. But it is great to see two well-matched teams in the playoff, and when you know there's nothing being held back, and this is win or go home time. So every ounce of energy, every emotion, everything they have is going into this game, and there's going to be some hitting and some missing and some carrying on out there. So I'm looking forward to it.
Number 64, Jerry Kramer joins us. Zach Gelb here with you, Philly's #1 college radio station, WHIP. And Jerry, these two teams, they have played, but it was the first week of the season. Can McCarthy, and I know it has been two different quarterbacks. Smith was the quarterback the first time for the 49ers when these two teams matched up, and now it's Colin Kaepernick. Can he use a lot of the film for the last time to gain an advantage in this game?
You know, Zach, there's probably 6 or 7 different starters now on the Green Bay Packers team than there was on the first game of the season, and we had such a bunch of new players. You know, we had like 6 or 7, 5 or 6 rookies starting in the backfield defensively on the defensive team. So we're quite a different football team, and I was at that game, and I was very disappointed about that game. And I'm saying, well, you know, these kids have got to have a year or 2 or sometimes 3 before they reach their peak. But they've come along very well, and I love the fact that Woodson is playing this weekend. He is such a stable force in there, and such a fountain of knowledge and information, and he can look out, here comes something, watch this, watch that. So I'm very excited about the whole situation, and I think it's going to be a great ball game. Plus the fact, Zach, that we're a bit of a running game now. You know, we haven't had a running game for most of the year, and we found this young kid Harris sitting around not doing much, so we put him to work, and with Kuhn and Grant, the 3 of them make a pretty good running back. So we've got a little bit of a running game there, and we're peaking. We're at the Rodgers is as hot as he's been all year. He's back to his performance of a couple of years ago. You know, I looked at him during the middle of the season. I said, he's not having a very good year. You know, Aaron's just not into it. And I look at the stats, and he's the number 1 quarterback in the NFL. And I said, well, maybe we have great expectations of Mr. Rodgers, and we do. And I don't think we'll be disappointed this week.
And he also comes to play Aaron Rodgers when it's time in January and February. He already has a Super Bowl under his belt when he beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you look at Kaepernick, though, the quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. The kid has a strong arm, and he can extend the play with his legs. What impresses you about him?
He's got great speed, and he's got size, and he's making pretty good decisions. And he's also whistling in the dark a little bit, Zach. He's saying, oh, it's just another game, which means it's not just another game. It's a big game. It's a playoff game. It's a huge game for him, and it's maybe the biggest game of his life. But he keeps saying, oh, it's just another game. I'm going to play on Saturday, right? Well, we'll see. But I'm impressed with him. I thought probably that Harbaugh was making a mistake when he left him in there instead of putting Smith back in after Smith recovered from the concussion. And I said, you know, this kid is not ready, and he's probably going to play 2 or 3 games or 3 or 4 games, and they'll find out that he's not ready. Then they'll go back to Smith, and Smith will be upset because he's missed so many games, and his lip will be out. So the whole quarterback situation will be a mess. Well, that didn't happen, and Kaepernick, looks like a pretty good football player, and he does have the speed and the running ability. So we're going to have to, and with the rest of the running ability that the San Francisco 49ers have. So we're going to have to keep an eye on him, and maybe our practice last week against Adrian Peterson, keeping him corralled and keeping our position on the field will help this week against the San Francisco quarterback.
I was with you. I thought he should have stayed with Smith, especially after that Rams game. But when you look at Kaepernick, and the thing that impressed me most, his defining game this year so far was the New England Patriot game. He came into Foxborough, he put up 31 points, then the Patriots came storming back, and then he was able to put the Patriots away with a beautiful touchdown pass. Moments like that, does that help build a player and build up his confidence for his first ever NFL playoff game?
Absolutely. But you're right. He's been up and down a little bit. That last Seattle game wasn't one of his highlight films, but he has those moments. And the game is a game of hits and misses, successes and failures, and no one has played a perfect game yet. You try, but you just don't. And what you have to do is take those successes and build your confidence to the point that it's a belief in yourself and in your team. And once you believe in yourself and your team and your system, then you're a much stronger player. And he is in the process of still building that belief system.
A few more questions. We're talking to Packers legend number 64, Jerry Kramer. And Jerry, I'm with you. I think because the Packers have Aaron Rodgers, they're getting healthy at the right time, that they're going to win this game and they're going to go on the road and get the victory and go back to the NFC Conference Championship game. But one area of concern for me with this Packers team is the offensive line. They're going up against Aldon Smith and that very impressive pass rush of the 49ers. How do you like that matchup this week? If you were playing in this game, how would you go up against Aldon Smith?
Well, they've been playing pretty well, and the mixture of the running game helps the offensive line. The addition of a running game where the defense can't just pin their ears back and shut their eyes and come wildly rushing across the line of scrimmage makes the offensive line's job a lot easier. It doesn't make it easy, but it makes it a lot easier. So I think the addition of Harris and the running game that we talked about is going to change the complexion a little bit. And Aaron is smart enough, and Dom Capers, the defensive coordinator for the Packers, is smart enough to know that they are not going to have time to hold that ball for 4, 5, 6 seconds. And Aaron is going to roll out right or left or move around in the pocket when he has to. But they're going to have to they're going to throw that ball on rhythm, on time, and they're going to use that running game to offset that defense and slow them down. And that's maybe, one of the best defenses in the game right now. So it's going to be a chore, and it's going to be a physical football game. They're going to come out whaling, so Green Bay is going to have to buckle their hat and bring their lunch and their lunch bucket and maybe a flashlight to get through the night, and it's going to be a great football game, so just settle back and enjoy it.
The year they won the Super Bowl, I think this offensive line allowed 36 sacks. This year, the Packers offensive lineman in the regular season allowed 51 sacks. Would Vince Lombardi be able to sleep if you guys were letting up 51 sacks back in the day?
Zach, what we're missing mostly on those statistics is the number of interceptions that Aaron Rodgers has thrown this year. Do you happen to know what that is?
I think isn't it like 12? Isn't it around there? It hasn't been that many. Well, for Rodgers, actually, that's a lot, but it hasn't been like 12.
I think it was like 2.
This whole year, he's only thrown 2 interceptions.
I think so. Look it up. But now think it's an extremely low number for the number of touchdowns, and rarely does anyone, it used to be that was a number, you throw 30 touchdowns, you throw 30 interceptions, then it got to be 20 and then 15. But Aaron does not throw interceptions. And the reason he gets sacked is he holds that ball or won't throw it into protection, won't throw it into a crack where he's uncertain. And so he'll get sacked rather than throw an interception. And now, always when the interception rate is that low, he reminds me of Bart Starr in that respect. Bart in championships, playoffs, Super Bowls, game to determine titles, Bart threw 244 passes with 1 interception. Now, Aaron is in that same mold now, so he is going to have some sacks, but he's not going to have any interceptions. And quite frankly, I think that's a very bright way to play this game. Don't turn over the ball.
8 interceptions on the year. I just looked it up for Aaron Rodgers, but he hasn't thrown a pick since that Vikings game on the 2nd of December. So only 8 interceptions on the year, but as of late, he hasn't thrown any. So it looks like a great advantage for the Packers come Saturday night.
I'm sorry, Zach, say it again?
It's only been 8 interceptions this year for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, 8.
It's incredible. It really is.
And it backs up just what I was saying, that the more sacks, the fewer interceptions, depending upon the individual and the situation and the time. And I think that's applicable in this situation. That Aaron, we know how good a quarterback he is. We know how accurate he is. And so it's a way to win championships, Zach. You don't turn over the ball.
No doubt about it. Jerry, you're great each and every time you come on this show. I appreciate the time. Thanks so much, and enjoy the game on Saturday.
Always a fun to be with you, kiddo. Stay well.